Almost all the marriages in my family have been arranged marriages. My mom's marriage to my bio dad was an arranged marriage, but it ended up in a messy divorce and him completely abandoning us before I was even born. My mom had a love marriage the second time, despite the disapproval of her family, and has been much happier with my stepdad than she probably would have ever been with my bio dad. Because of this, my mom has always been very adamant that she would not try to force us, my siblings and I, into arranged marriages despite what the rest of our family thought. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years now. We got engaged 2 months ago. He's met my parents and siblings, but as far as the majority of my extended family were concerned, I was single until 2 months ago. Early last year, my fiancé dropped me off home after work one day and my uncle was there. My uncle is the oldest sibling my mom has, so he's seen as the head of the family. He thinks he has a say in what the rest of us do. It was obvious my uncle was pissed, and he ended up grilling my fiancé, and I assume he met his standards. A lot of arranged marriages are about what both families can gain from one another, so he told my mom to get us married quickly. He wanted to make it look like we had an arranged marriage before the rest of our family found out. My mom ignored him and told us to keep dating if it's what we wanted. Over the past year, he's mentioned me getting married to my mom every single time he's spoken to her. Apparently, my uncle assumed just because he'd given the order that we were going to get married soon. He told my cousin, his daughter, that I had agreed to an arranged marriage, and because I had and she was older, she should agree to the match he'd found her. My cousin never mentioned this to me, but she did agree to marry the man my uncle found for her. They got married late last year. They haven't had a good marriage and my cousin is very unhappy. Her husband is incredibly controlling and hardly ever lets her go anywhere without him or a member of his family. Last week, she was over at my house when my fiancé came over to drop some of the clothes I'd left at his place over. When I told my family about my engagement, they all assumed it was an arranged marriage and I didn't bother clarifying because it really isn't anyone's business. You don't tend to do sleepovers if you're having an arranged marriage, so my cousin knew immediately it wasn't what she assumed. She started asking me questions about my relationship and I answered honestly. She got really angry at me and kept demanding to know why I didn't tell her about him. The thing is, I'm very close to this cousin, but I also know how our family is about dating and I didn't want my male cousins trying to strong-arm my fiancé. They've jokingly threatened this before. She pretty much blamed me for her arranged marriage and said she only agreed because she thought I was going to have one too, and if I had told her I had a boyfriend, she would have had the courage to stand up to her family. She hasn't spoken to me since. I do feel bad for her. I know how unhappy she is, but if she had mentioned what my uncle told her earlier, I would have clarified. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I don't know what I can do to fix this. I am a 37-year-old male. I have a 13-year-old son. I was a widower when I met my now wife. She has a 16-year-old daughter from another relationship. The family is often on pretty good terms. My son is the quiet one in the house. He keeps to himself a lot, but not to the point of being concerning. My wife and stepdaughter are the complete opposite. They both encourage him to be outgoing and share activities and join gatherings with extended family. My son complained about having to be forced out of his comfort zone and having his need for space invalidated. I spoke to both my wife and stepdaughter and asked them to give him space and freedom to spend his time however he wanted. They apologized and promised to let him be. As Mother's Day was approaching, I wanted to throw my wife a surprise Mother's Day celebration. It was no longer a surprise because my stepdaughter gave her the heads so she could prepare. Yesterday I got off work earlier than usual to get final arrangements done. We planned to celebrate at the restaurant and invited her family there. I had the key, and while I was entering the house through the front door, I overheard my wife and stepdaughter talking to my son. My wife was asking my son if he could convince me to let him stay home and not go with them to the restaurant to celebrate. I paused and decided to keep listening. My son said why, and she told him that his introverted and socially inept attitude will make her family uncomfortable and will ruin the mood. He promised her that he'd be well behaved and would try to interact and socialize with everyone, but she said that she wasn't buying it. He kept reassuring her, but she snapped and told him that technically she's not his mom, so she didn't get why he wanted to celebrate Mother's Day with her so badly. My stepdaughter threw some, I don't remember, backhanded comment, and then both of them were shocked to see me standing there. Both were staring without saying anything. I told my son and his stepsister to go to their rooms, then told my wife that the celebration was off, cancelled. She tried to argue, asking why repeatedly, and I told her why. She tried to explain that she didn't mean it like that and that I only heard part of the conversation but not all of it. I told her I was done arguing and the decision was already made. She yelled, asking what she was going to tell her family, and said that I was making tremendous mistake towards her. I ignored her while she kept throwing tantrum after a tantrum. Early this morning she took my stepdaughter and went to stay with her folks. Not a single call or text from her so far. Situation is full of tension. I'm upset still, but more hurt, to be honest. I mean, yes, I did say I was going to have this celebration, but I thought that what she said to my son was too harsh to ignore. My 7-year-old daughter's doing virtual school in our living room recently. I heard her teacher address a girl named Kelly a few times, which stuck out to me because my daughter's class is only about 15 kids and I know them all by this point in the year. A couple times more and I realized she was calling my daughter Kelly. My daughter's name is Keely, pronounced Keely. So after school was over I asked her if that had been happening all year in this teacher's class, and she said it had, and it really annoyed her. I asked her why she hadn't corrected the teacher if it annoyed her so much, and she said she had repeatedly at the beginning of the year, but the teacher kept calling her Kelly, so eventually she gave up on reminding her. I sent the teacher a quick email explaining the misunderstanding but got no response. This teacher teaches a special subject, think music, gym, art, or language, not just one grade level. So my daughter will be in her classes for the next several years, so we couldn't just wait it out. And how moments like these are handled now will set the stage for how my kid deals with similar situations on her own in the working world. I encouraged my daughter to come to class early or stay later again, thinking maybe she hadn't heard or understood her last time. So a quiet one-on-one would be better. She got to the class early and she told her very politely that her name was Keely, like really, instead of Kelly like jelly. And that people often get it confused, so she just wanted to clarify. So class starts and sure enough she gets called Kelly again almost immediately. So there's only so much self-advocation a 7-year-old can be expected to do. I just walked over and said, "Hi, this is Keely's dad. Hers name not Kelly. It's Keely." A few hours later I had an email in my inbox inviting my wife and I to a parent-teacher conference with the vice principal. The long and short of the meeting ended up being the school feels that while the teacher probably should have learned her name, that the real problem is she feels I challenged her authority by correcting her in class, and that the names were similar enough for it to not have warranted such drastic action. That surprised me. I couldn't believe a meeting was necessary, let alone that it cast blame on us. I can't tell if I'm being that annoying, my kid matters most parent that my grandmother the school teacher always complained about, or if the teacher should just learn her damn name, because that's a basic part of her job. When I was 19 and a sophomore in college, I had a boyfriend I thought I really loved. Looking back, maybe it was just teenage puppy love infatuation. Not sure, but I guess it's not important. I know I'm very biased and what I want is what's best for my daughter, but I think my feelings are getting in the way of that. I had been with Tom for about 8 months at that point. He was on the baseball team and very popular. But one day I discovered I was pregnant and told Tom. He freaked out and got super pissed. He demanded I get an abortion, said he would not stay with me otherwise. He did offer to pay the full expenses of it though. So I went to the clinic and I couldn't do it. I'm very pro-choice and told myself the logical thing to do would be to have an abortion. But when it came down to it, I just couldn't do it. I admit part of it was that I was afraid, but I also felt an attachment for my baby. The thought of getting rid of him / her made me feel like throwing up. So I told Tom that I did love him and I wasn't trying to trap him, but I simply couldn't have an abortion. Maybe we could look into adoption, but abortion was out. Tom said he had never loved me, and while I was fun, I was now causing him too much trouble for him to bother with me anymore. And I was right, I wasn't going to trap him. He said I was free to choose to keep the baby, and he was free to choose to have nothing to do with me or it, and to not even think of trying to get child support from him. I won't go into details, but Tom made it clear he would make life as miserable as possible for me if I tried to contact him again, get child support, etc. Maybe it was wrong to do, but I figured all that trouble and drama just wasn't worth it and I would make my own way. I was, however, devastated and completely heartbroken. I admit it really me up. I never spoke with or saw Tom again. I did consider adoption, but in the end, long story short, I chose to keep my child. Faith is 4 now. It's been a long and hard road, but I graduated college and got a job. We live in a tiny apartment and finances are tight, but we make do. I love Faith like crazy and I do not regret the choice to keep her whatsoever. She makes me a better person and we have a good life. However, 3 days ago I received a letter in the mail. It was from Tom. Inside the envelope was a letter and a check for $3,000. This is what the letter said: Vika, I know this is coming out of nowhere and I'm sorry, but I didn't know a better way to do this. I am so sorry for how I acted 5 years ago. I was selfish and a complete fool. I know that doesn't begin to cover it. These past 5 years have really had an effect on me. I got a job at Restraint. I started hanging out with different people. Good people instead of college jocks. I know I ran from my responsibility and I treated you with callous cruelty. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to make it right. Here is a check for $3,000 for Faith. I know that doesn't begin to cover what her expenditures have been, but I wanted to show I am serious about what I'm about to say. I want to be a part of our daughter's life. I will go as slow as you like. I would very much like to set up regular child support payments as well as pay off whatever back child support I owe you for the past 5 years, including hospital appointments during your pregnancy. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to meet my daughter and be a part of her life in whatever way I can. I want to help her and I want to help you and start making up for the terrible way I acted. Here is my contact information. I am willing to do what you ask of me. Thank you for your time. Tom. I was blown away. I'm also beyond pissed off. I'm thinking of the pregnancy I had to deal with after getting dumped like that. Exams and papers I had to write. Giving birth to her on my own. The late night feedings, all the diaper changes, the constant crying. Trying to afford clothes to keep Faith warm during the winter as she grew while also making sure she didn't go hungry, the tantrums. The first steps, first words, the potty training. He wasn't there for any of that, and now he just wants to come waltzing into her life like nothing happened. After doing whatever he felt like now that Faith is out of the unfunny baby years and she's a well-behaved child who can now carry on a conversation, and knows how to use toilet and doesn't wake up every 2 hours. Faith has started asking questions like, where is her daddy? How come she doesn't have a daddy? And I've been doing my best. I've been saying mommy doesn't know where daddy is, true until now. And she doesn't have a father because daddy wasn't ready to be one when she was born. Maybe that's the wrong answer, but I am doing my absolute best. I'm thinking of how Tom hurt me and bailed when life got hard. I can't stand the thought of him doing that to Faith. She's a sweetheart and quite sensitive. She doesn't understand unkindness. She makes friends with everyone and is very innocent. I've done my best to teach her to be a calm, kind, respectful person, and everyone loves her. However, I do know she needs a good male role model in her life, and I do feel guilty for not having one for her. I haven't had a boyfriend or dated since Tom because all my energy and focus has been on graduating college, getting a job, and being a good mother to my daughter. I never really thought about Tom much after Faith was born, but now that I am with this intrusion into our lives, I think I hate and despise him. I want him to just go away. I wanted to not even cash the check and to tell him to take his money and shove it, but my parents and close friends reminded me that that is Faith's money and she is entitled to it, and I agree. At minimum, I want to get some child support going because Faith deserves all the financial assistance and opportunities she can get. However, I know if I get regular child support, Tom will want to be in Faith's life, and frankly, I don't want that. I don't want him to hurt her and bail when life gets hard, because it is when you have a kid. I also feel like he doesn't deserve her. 4-year-olds are a lot more fun than infants. How convenient he suddenly shows up and wants to be a dad when the hardest part is out of the way. But I honestly do want what's best for Faith. I think she deserves to have a good daddy. I just don't think Tom is. I think Faith is better off having no dad than a bad or half-assed one. She deserves the money. But am I right to take the money and not give Tom any access to my daughter? I can't stand the thought of him hurting her. The thought of dropping her off at his house where I don't have access to her makes me want to scream and run away. Am I out of line for taking Tom's money but saying that's as close as he will ever get to her? I am not convinced in the slightest he has changed. I feel like this is guilt money and I want to throw that check in the trash. But it's Faith's money, not mine. Faith and I have a good life and I feel like Tom is going to ruin that. But is it right to keep Faith from her biological parent when he has sent the money? I hate feeling like I owe him because of that. P.S. College boyfriend dumped me after I got pregnant and threatened to ruin my life if I tried to talk to or get child support from him. Almost 5 years later I get a $3,000 check in the mail and a letter apologizing for what he did, and saying he wants to be a dad. I want to tell him to stay the hell away from us, but I want what's best for my child. Tom is listed as the father on the birth certificate.